Hey, welcome back to my Federalist paper series. This video will cover Federalist 2 through 5, titled Concerning Dangers from Foreign Force and Influence. These 4 essays were written by John Jay and make up practically the entirety of his contribution. Outside of 2 through 5, Jay would write one more, Federalist number 64. Anyways, let's jump right in. Federalist number 2 begins with a very brief explanation for government. Nothing is more certain than the indispensable necessity of government, and it is equally undeniable that whenever and however it is instituted, the people must cede to it some of their natural rights in order to vest it with requisite powers. Jay is forwarding a basic axiom here: a government is necessary for a society, and that any government, by necessity, derives its powers from the people. People must consent to handing over some of their inherent freedoms and rights in order to invest a government with the power and legitimacy required to ensure their interests. Continuing on, it is well worthy of consideration, therefore, whether it would conduce more to the interest of the people of America that they should, to all general purposes, be one nation under one federal government, or that they should divide themselves into separate confederacies and give to the head of each the same kind of powers which they are advised to place in one national government. Giving up control to a state and entrusting it with authority is a very serious matter. The debate at hand is this: should the country be a unified whole under the Constitution, as the Federalists are arguing, or should the power of a single central government be divided up among a series of smaller governments? Jay notes that until recently, the firm consensus was that America was best left united. He argues that the geography of the nation is itself a unity. That is, in 1787, America was a contiguous landmass with shared borders of the Mississippi River on the one side and the Atlantic Ocean on the other, and this was all augmented by a river network that acted as a highway, binding the nation together. Also, in Jay's view, America is naturally united through a common people, roughly sharing the same heritage, religion, culture, and language, and who, lest you forget, just fought a war together. Jay then goes on to deliver a little history lesson, reminding the reader of the fraught conditions under which the Articles of Confederation were wrought, and of the comparative serenity with which the Constitutional Convention deliberated. He draws parallels between the Congress of 1774 and the early skepticism it received with that of the Constitutional Convention. Jay points out that people came to trust the sincerity, integrity, and judgment of the members of the Continental Congress, even though they were unknown and untested at first. And now, some of those same distinguished members, now in fact known and tested, created and argue for the new Constitution. Jay ends Federalist number 2 by reaffirming his conviction that the choice is between a prosperous union and 3 or 4 confederacies, which would invariably crumble into disaster, tragedy, and permanent subjugation. Jay begins Federalist number 3 by stating that safety is a first and foundational concern of a free people. Obviously, in this set of essays, Jay is focusing primarily on foreign matters. Specifically, the threat of war is a security threat that he believes a union is better able to protect against. Jay writes, "The number of wars which have happened, or will happen in the world, will always be found to be in proportion to the number and weight of the causes, whether real or pretended, which provoke or invite them. If this remark be just, it becomes useful to inquire whether so many just causes of war are likely to be given by united America as by disunited America. For if it should turn out that united America will probably give the fewest, then it will follow that in this respect the Union tends most to preserve the people in a state of peace with other nations." Jay was arguing that a union will both better avoid inciting unnecessary conflicts and be more capable of warding off wanton attack. He distinguishes between what he calls just wars and unjust wars. Just wars, Jay says, are a byproduct of treaty violations or a response to direct violence. So, the point of Federalist number 3 is to make the case why a united America is less likely than a disunited America to rashly precipitate a just war through violating treaties or being overly aggressive. The topic of unjust wars is the subject of the next Federalist paper. Anyways, Jay says that the administration, the political councils, and the judicial decisions of the national government will be more wise, systematical, and judicious than those of individual states. and consequently more satisfactory with respect to other nations, as well as more safe with respect to us. That is, because the best and brightest minds across the entirety of the nation will be working together under one government, foreign policy will be conducted in a prudent and competent manner. Jay also points out that treaties will be interpreted and enforced consistently under a national government, which is unlikely to be the case under 13 states, or 3 or 4 confederacies, the latter case increasing the likelihood of war. But that is not all. Remember, Jay said that a just war is due to treaty violations and direct violence. To that end, Jay asserts that violences are more frequently caused by the passions and interests of a part than of the whole, of 1 or 2 states than of the Union. What Jay means by this is that historically, it has been the efforts and interests of a few states that have led to the onset of violence, and with a national government, such aggression and compulsion would be offset by the cooler judgment of states with no direct attachment. This would allow a dispassionate federal government to arbitrate disputes, and if necessary, correct the behavior of states that get a little too ahead of themselves and excite tension against foreign nations. Previewing his next essay, Jay concludes Federalist number 3 by positing that a united America will have much more leverage in dealing with other countries than if it were separate. He cites the weak Republic of Genoa and their inability to avoid submitting to humiliating demands in their appeasement of King Louis XIV. With Federalist number 4, Jay tackles the subject of unjust wars and why a union would be better protection against them than disunion. While it is frequently the case that despotic monarchs will declare wars for petty and personal reasons, Jay claims that there are other factors that may induce a foreign nation to start an unjust war against us. Specifically, Jay lists the emergence of American commercial competition and direct trade as reasons why other countries may have an interest in attacking us. The idea is that Americans can supply certain goods and products cheaper than other nations, which naturally begets economic rivalry, and every growth on our part is a loss on theirs. Furthermore, whereas before independence, Americans were only able to access Indian and Chinese exports through European middlemen, now we were able to engage with those nations directly. However, at the end of the day, as Jay notes, a foreign nation may declare war on us for seemingly no clear reason at all, and come up with their pretenses later. Therefore, the thing best able to discourage war is a strong system of defense, which Jay argues depends on the government, the arms, and the resources of the country. From here, he reasons that a national government is superior over multiple smaller governments for the following reasons. He reiterates that the best administrators and diplomats are consolidated under a federal government. He says that treaties, under one hand, will consider the whole nation's interests instead of just a part, and that if a particular state is attacked, a union can concentrate the entire nation's forces to the affronted area, something that is not possible under separate confederacies. Finally, Jay points out, the state of Great Britain would never have acceded to naval supremacy if England, Scotland, and Wales were operating independently from one another. Their militaries would be unable to come together when necessary, as integrating and coordinating 3 separate forces with distinct military training and equipment would be fruitless. And so, Jay argues, America would have the most efficient defense under one standardized military. We are infinitely stronger together than we are apart. He closes out Federalist number 4, writing, "If foreign nations see that our national government is efficient and well administered, our trade prudently regulated, our militia properly organized and disciplined, our resources and finances discreetly managed, our credit reestablished, our people free, contented, and united, they will be much more disposed to cultivate our friendship than provoke our resentment." Federalist number 5, John Jay's final essay in this set, is about how foreign nations would prefer that America be divided into 3 or 4 nations. He quotes a letter from Queen Anne urging the Scottish Parliament to unite with England in 1706. She wrote that a unification was the only way to secure happiness, and it would thwart the designs of enemies who would do anything to prevent or delay it. Jay agrees, finding that the history of Great Britain before Union was one of conflict and hostility among the constituent parts. So too would America if it fell into separate nations. Instead of their being joined in affection and free from all apprehension of different interests, envy and jealousy would soon extinguish confidence and affection. Hence, like most other bordering nations, they would always be either involved in disputes and war, or live in the constant apprehension of them. Jay's argument is that an America divided into 3 or 4 governments would not remain equal for long. One section, Jay reasons the North, would eventually become more wealthy and powerful than the rest. This would inevitably breed resentment and distrust among the states. Other nations would of course notice and exploit this. Jay writes, "The proposed confederacies will be distinct nations. Each of them would have its commerce with foreigners to regulate by distinct treaties, and as their productions and commodities are different and proper for different markets, so would those treaties be essentially different. Different commercial concerns must create different interests, and of course, different degrees of political attachment to and connection with different foreign nations. Hence, it might and probably would happen that the foreign nation with whom the Southern Confederacy might be at war would be the one with whom the Northern Confederacy would be the most desirous of preserving peace and friendship. Such a case would be catastrophic. It would mark the beginning of an irrevocable breakup of America into a condition no different than Europe's concatenation of states with distinct and often contrary interests and national identities." And here, Jay ends Federalist number 5 by reminding the reader that should an America in 3 or 4 parts find comfort more in alliances with various foreign bodies than with each other, they may very well be deceived into occupation under false overtures of friendship, such betrayals being common within the history of the Roman conquests. And so we've reached the end. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a good one.